Hi, I'm Scott Martin from Bonsai Matsu, and this is the Bonsai Stuff podcast. I want to chat. It's nearly been 12 months since I became a full-time bonsai professional, and I want to have a bit of a reminisce about that, what I've learnt, what I've done, what I've seen, places I've been, all that sort of stuff, because the year's gone pretty quickly, to be honest. And I just wanted to spend a little bit of time going down memory path for me, and also talk about some lessons that I've learnt recently, and just refresh a course for us all on the need to constantly thin and reduce length on our bonsai as we're working on them, and just to summarise a bit of what's going on around the yard at the moment. So stick around, it's sure to be an interesting podcast, and thank you as always for tuning in. About 18 months ago or thereabouts, my wife and I decided that it was time for us to sell our business, a printing business, and I was looking very keenly on going to become a full-time bonsai professional. Bonsai Matsu's been around for 6 or 7 years now, I think it is. So it had been building, been growing, and I'd been spending a lot of time on it and loving it, really, really loving the fact that I could, build something and transfer information and really build other people's bonsai for them and their knowledge base to continue to develop and grow themselves along their bonsai path, bonsai journey. So 12 or 18 months later, looking back on what I was able to do and what I've achieved, it's been fantastic. I just sat down the other day and thought, wow, it's nearly 12 months now. What's happened? I've been travelling a lot. Like, there's been a lot of places to been to, and literally once I'd made the decision to go full time, just prior to starting it, I was up in Sydney. Then so since then I've been Sydney. So I've had Sydney, Brisbane, Adelaide, Canberra, Perth, and done work in Melbourne as well. A lot of places to go, as well as running my private bonsai business for education, which has been flat out just absolutely the support I've received. And I know a lot of people listening to this are supporters and come along to do the classes and workshops and that sort of thing. And it's a hand-on-heart moment to say thank you very much, because it's actually it's daunting when you take that first leap, that step into darkness to do something like this, especially in bonsai. I heard a lot my whole life that being a bonsai professional is very hard, never do it, and always hold back, have something else to fall back onto, and it's I suppose hold you back from making the tough call or doing what you'd love to do, because it is very scary at the time, I suppose, taking that leap. But I'd built something already outside of full time, doing it part time outside hours, and I was very confident that I could pass on things accurately, and the results of what I'd been passing on had worked. And there's people that have been coming since day one that know they mean a lot to me, and seeing their bonsais develop has been great reward for me. So that was the first bit of reflection, and the other part was that I've actually been a lot busier than what I expected. There's been so much demand for seeing things through. Recently conventions, local club level trips, doing a lot of workshops and demonstrations and presentations and that sort of thing, and it's been so well received that it's just blown me away. So I thought, not only reflecting on sort of where I've been, which I'm personally extremely proud of, and I love, and I'm so grateful for everything, and I'm really enthused that this past 12 months in Australia, things have done really well. We're getting to a point with the economy where things are getting a bit tougher. That's always going to happen. And so to see that there's still a lot of support there, even though, work with bonsai is one of those optional things that people don't have to do. It's really nice. And I can tell you that the contact that I receive outside of traditional business for helping people and answering questions, not only here in Australia but also around the world, has grown exponentially, and it's lovely. It's really good to know that there's so many people out there now that feel confident enough to ask a question at the right time, and that can now bank on there being someone at the other end that will give you their opinion. Whether it's right, whether it's what you do, whether it's what you follow, that's entirely up to you. But just knowing that you've got that there is it makes me smile, because I wish I had that. I wish I had someone when I first started, or even now. Wish there was someone that I could bounce ideas off and whatever. And there is. I do have a network that I do that with. But from an individual point of view, one thing to know: you're listening to this podcast, I can guarantee you, mate, you're not alone. We're all in this crazy little bonsai world together, so it's really, really nice. And I wanted to talk about where the future is heading for me, what I see happening over the next 12 months. Part of the development of the plan that I set for myself at the start of the year. Episode 1 was talking about a plan, and part of that plan for me is to look to successfully complete the first year, but then as I go into my second year, start looking at expanding. What further information can you pass along? I get constantly reminded by people that they're very grateful for me offering any information that I possibly do, but a few little comments here and there about people saying, do you think there's other people around that maybe hold back the information? And I don't want to be, and I can't answer that, whether that happens or whether it doesn't. And to be honest, it doesn't bother me if it does or if it doesn't. All I can do is what I do, and all you can do is what you can do. And being positive is the way to go. But I also want to therefore dig deeper into what I've got tucked away in the grey matter, and think, well, what else have I got up there that I can pass along, and how can I get that out of here and put it over there where it's accessible to people who are possibly interested. For instance, this year there's been new courses on cedars that I'm offering, and so there's further things that I want to dig into, more specialty classes and more on the technical side of things, like the application of the techniques that I really want to make sure that are able to be learnt thoroughly. With a lot of the travelling I've done lately, a lot of what I've talked about has been the technique for major branch bending and significant bending on bonsai, where you're not smashing the thing, you're not drilling holes in it, you're not doing a lot of damage, and it's a controlled, measured technique that you can use, and it's really efficient, and it's perfect for a lot of people when they're applying the bending techniques, but you don't know what you don't know. So it's one of those things that I've been looking to pass on. So it's things like that I'm thinking in the back of my grey matter, that I really want to make sure that there's greater depth in the specialty offerings that I can put together to make sure that it's down on paper and it's passed on as rapidly as possible. And another thing is, I'm a great believer that there's knowledge, and then there's the skill to execute the knowledge. And there's a massive difference between those two. Just reading something on a piece of paper or being told, okay, this is what you do, is very different to actually being shown the technique, being involved with the technique, and then applying the technique yourself. Inspire, inform, involve. That's basically the 3 I's that I've built everything that I do around, and I still continue to. I think about it every single day when I'm in the workshop. How can this either inspire, inform, or involve the bonsai world with what I'm doing right now? And it's not to build a pedestal for myself to sit on a throne on. It's to make sure that we're all there together. We're on a plateau together, all at the same level, saying, let's all go, let's all increase the quality of our knowledge and the quality, therefore, of our bonsai through the application of these really good techniques. Not sloppy application, but really succinct and practical, exact application of good techniques. So that's something that I think that I can offer over the next period of the evolution of, being a bonsai professional. And I was contacted recently, and hopefully it comes off that there's early next year a trip planned to head across the ditch to New Zealand and share the Bonsai Love over there too, which would be fantastic. From a personal point of view, it's a place I'd love to get to, and the bonsai community over there looks really, really tight, and it's something that I would love to be involved with. So I do want to spend a lot of time travelling and in a slightly religious way, spreading the good word of bonsai amongst the faithful, amongst the people that that share the passion and are there as sponges ready to go, because I really enjoy it. I really love that engagement and that breaking things down to the point where at the end of whatever it is that I've done, people come up going, "That was great. I got so much out of that." Or or if they walk up and say, "That one thing that you said, that's the one thing I'm going to take home," and that's honest to God, that's all I want. All I want is for you to sit there and maybe, I know what it's like when I'm sitting in an audience somewhere and someone's talking and there's so much coming out, or it's a lot of grey stuff. It's a lot of, oh yeah, I could do that, or I could do that, I could do that. Then there's a light bulb moment where one thing gets said and you go, yep, and you latch onto it and you hang on to it and you run with it, and it's life-changing for you. And that to me is something like teabag fertilising. It's one of those things that, I get a lot of hesitation with every now and then. People are like, I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure. And then all of a sudden something happens and people give it a go and they see the results and they go, oh my God, how easy is that? That is something that I'm going to do. Of course, there's reasons why people can't do this. I'm just using this as an example, as one of those light bulb moments where for me, when I first saw the technique, it was like, that's a game changer. That practically changes how I'm going to fertilise my trees and how easy it's going to be, and how I can now multiply when I want to increase the feeding. I can now have a mathematical formula for when I want to decrease the feeding at certain times of the year. There's a simple way of saying, right, no more fertilising during this time of the year, and knowing that there's no more fertiliser. So it's, for me, it was just like a real, yep, that's a clear mindset, and it's things like that I want to make the world a smaller place when it comes to bonsai. I know I'm accessible. I know I'm the other end, and I want to drive that point home even harder to new people that possibly don't listen to the podcast, that maybe don't see the Instagram stuff, that maybe have never reached out or are a bit too daunted to, because once you tear that Band-Aid off, it's one of those things that sometimes I've got to quell the enthusiasm a little bit and say, hey, hang on a minute, just you're not going to get Encyclopedia Britannica out of me in 30 minutes. It's just not the way it works. But let's just chip away at this bit by bit and build things up as we go, and we'll develop this along the journey together. I know I've talked about this before in earlier podcasts about your bonsai support network, and look, it is so important, and every place that I've been to, every little bonsai community that I've been involved with, without fail, there's been their little networks. There's been groups of people that I can see from a distance and go, yep, those people there, they're part of a network. Those people there, they're part of a network. These people, I can see that they're forming their associations and their friendships. Maybe they've been a bit too, they've been a little bit hesitant to get involved at a local club level, or they've been hesitant to get along to meetings, or they've been hesitant to get involved in workshops. And then, so like I said, that Band-Aid comes off, the floodgates open. It's like, yeah, hey, that was great. That was so much better than I expected. And yeah, I'm going to do another one. They're not all going to be to a certain standard. and you shouldn't be disappointed when they're not. You should just really appreciate the moments when they do hit the mark for you and go, that was great. But next time you come along, it was okay. But it's still part of that socialising, that social network that you've got when it comes to your bonsai that you're developing at that time. And that's what's really, really important. And, for me personally, the number of people that I've met, that I've chatted with, or that have been involved with me in some way over a period by travelling around Australia to all these different areas and getting to finally meet them, put faces or humans in front of the name. It's been fantastic. It's been really, really good, and the amount of people now that I'd truly classify in the friendship zone from having done these things is far greater than what it was a year ago. And like I said, I am honestly truly grateful. I know this is a bit of a rant, but I wanted to put this onto the podcast because it's really important, not just for me, but for the people that have had an association with me in any shape, whether it's via a message or face-to-face in my workshop, or whether it's at a course, or whether it's acquiring one of my trees, or whether it's me being invited to your club, or you coming along to a workshop at that club, anywhere in Australia, or coming and sitting in the audience at a convention, or just coming up to me after I've done something and saying positive things. It honest to God means so much to me, and that's what this podcast is for. It's one of those things that I'm using as a bit of a platform for me and for my way of trying to spread bonsai love and encourage everybody in the bonsai world. But that's one of the things that I'm going to be pushing as well over the next 12 months is this podcast. It's been fantastic for me, having more time to be able to invest into it, because there is a lot of effort that goes in behind the scenes with these episodes. They're not just me sitting down rambling along, and I know I've loved every second of it. That said, there is going to be a mid-year break coming up, so don't think that I'm losing momentum. I'm definitely not. I'm just having a little bit of a snippet in the middle of the year because it's getting to an extremely busy time, and that's something that I'm going to talk about later on in the podcast. Is what I've been up to around the yard, just as a gentle reminder for people to say, hey, you better be on your bike because things are coming to a close for certain things and they're about to start for others, and you need to make sure that you're ready as always. But there is a lot more planned with this podcast, because I think of all the mediums that I work with, it gives the most to the listener. And it is something that goes on in perpetuity, so it's always there if you want to listen back to an old catalogue of something at whatever time of the year is relevant to you, whether northern or southern hemisphere. And it's a nice medium for you everyone that's listening, the people listening, to zone out for a little bit. I love it. I released this in Australian Eastern Standard Time, nice and early on a Monday morning. So hopefully my thought was with it that you would jump in the car on the way to work on a Monday morning, and maybe it just puts a little bit of a spring in your step for half an hour on the way to work, or when you get out of bed and go, hey, there's another podcast. I don't have to get stuck in traffic. I don't have to think about, that crappy job that I've got, or I don't have to do this, whatever it is. I'm not saying everyone's got crappy jobs, but it was just purely designed that if I did it consistently, it would maybe spark a little bit of a smile on your dial as you started the working week, and maybe make that first step you've got to take into the week a little bit more pleasant. And I've had a lot of feedback that that's the case, that, there's people that get into their office, they put in their AirPods and they just zone out, and fantastic. If it works like that for you, then by Christ, that's making me very happy as well. So it's working for both of us. That this droning voice that you're listening to for the podcast is doing something positive in your at the start of your week for your bonsai, but also and more importantly for you, because you're worth it. By now, you should know that one of the most important things that I rabbit on about constantly are those inner buds, right? And it's all got to do with the sunlight getting in there, sunlight and airflow getting into those inner areas of our branches. And I'm not going to dig into that anymore, but I was working on a Japanese black pine the other day, a variety, Makawa, and it's quite a dense tree, and you'll see it if you have a look on Instagram or Facebook recently. There's it's on there. It's on one of my more recent black pines that I've posted with doing the autumn winter cleanup and thin out and whatever. And as I was working on it, I looked at some branches that had sort of extended beyond the silhouette, and I looked at the needle length on it, and you'll notice when you look at the pictures that some of the needles on it are quite long and distinctly longer than a previous photo for that tree. And so I thought, it's probably an interesting one to talk about, because as I sat back, before I took my scissors out, before I took my tweezers out, I just looked at the tree, just spun it around for about 5 minutes, and just looking at it thinking, okay, so what's my objective with this tree? It's not just purely to pluck this thing and open it up and let sunlight in there. It's to look at the silhouette. It's a more advanced tree. It's got lovely, lovely branches on it. The bark's really developing nicely on it. It's got a great nabari. The height to width ratio is what I'd consider perfect for me. The pot to tree width ratio is really, really nice. The weight of the tree is spot on. Like it is a light tree that is one that I can see myself having for forever, to be honest. I think that one will be taken from my cold, dead hands. That tree, it's one that I've worked on for a very long time, and I'll continue to work on as well. So for me, it was really looking at it going, okay, what's your thought process? And it's probably something that you can talk about as well, because it's very different on that tree to all of other of my pines that I work in. Normally I just chuck a pine on the bench. It's got nice, it's got longish needles. It's got lots of growth coming from where I've decanted it last year, righto. Just take it, thin it back to 2, pluck some old needles and move on. Wire it a little bit, make it look pretty, take off old wire, restructure it, and it's back out to the bench. But this one was very different, and it was actually really enjoyable to work on. It can be daunting at times, a tree like that, because there is so much work. That theory of 1 to 2, where one branch turns into 2 every year, on a tree like that, where the growth is so dense and the needle length reduces rapidly, like 1 year of decantling and that thing's got needle length of, 10, 15 mil. That's it. And when it's not decandled, the needle length can be around the 6, 7, 8 centimetre mark. So it fluctuates quite rapidly. So when I come to working on a tree like that, there's been years where I've looked at it and gone, oh, geez, I can't do that. I don't have that much time. But I do like to put that one on the bench and say, well, you know what? Now you've got a full day on this thing. Like allocate 6 to 8 hours on this thing, because it's got to be done right. You can't cut corners with it. You've got to do it properly. So I sit back, enjoy it 5-10 minutes, spin it round and round it goes. And I keep looking, thinking, okay, well, it's starting to get too tall. Originally it was. And so then I'd look and go, okay, well, where's it too tall then? And if it keeps being allowed to extend, even though I'm getting that ramification, I'm getting nice short needles, if I keep allowing this thing to extend, then I'm going to lose what I love about the tree, which is the height to width ratio and the trunk to width ratio as well. So I had to make a really clear, conscious effort to reduce the length of the foliage mass to bring it down, which doesn't always apply to just the apex area. When you're reducing the height of these things, my approach was to reduce the height of all of the foliage pads as well. So I start at the apex by bringing it down, and when you cut things off, you sort of cut back and go, okay, let's work that back. How old's that branch I've just cut off? All right, there's 2 that comes back to another 2. That's 2 years. Back to another 2. That's 3. Back to another 2. Oh, God. That's 4 years worth of growth I've just cut off that branch. But I was, like I said, I'd made this conscious effort not to worry about removing the foliage and being worried about what I was taking off. I wanted to maintain and reduce my height level back. So kicking back in the back of my head thinking, you've done the right thing all these years. You've got those inner buds. Now it's time to activate them. Now it's time for them to start doing exactly what it is that you've wanted them to do all this time. So I started removing these 3-4 year old bunches of branches off the apex. First cut was like, oh, that's a lot. Are you sure you want to take that off? And then I'd sit back and I'd look at it and go, yeah, well, that's not only just opened that up a little bit there, because there's a lot of other foliage around that area to fill the spot anyway. And if you look at the pictures, you'll never even see where it was they were cut from. But there was probably 10 or 15 major branches like that taken off the apex to try and push the height back down, that were all varying between at least 2 years old to probably 4 years old maximum in the length of those branches and the number of sub branches that were coming off those areas as well. And it just reinforced to me, this is why you're doing it. So then you'll notice, I want to talk about the needle length that was on the tree as well. And you'll notice that the needle length was quite long. If you zoom in on some of the photos, you'll see that there's some short needles in there, but there's also some really long ones as well. And look, I could have got my shears out. I could have cut all the needles like you see often in bonsai magazines and make it that perfectly rounded dome on the tree. But I don't do that specifically because there were lots of areas on that tree that I deemed at decandling time last year that I wouldn't decandle because I felt that they were too weak. So rather than just constantly methodically going, yep, there's new growth, cut it off, decandle. There's new growth, cut it off, decandle. Last year I made the choice to say, no, well, a fair amount of this tree, probably, around the 50% mark, maybe let's call it 40 to 60% of the tree, because I don't know exactly what it was, but a hell of a lot of it was not decandled at the time because I was concerned that if I did, then I might start getting dieback, or even worse, I'd get no growth replacing or no new buds activating from those areas. So therefore I'd be set back. So let it grow for a year. And those long needles are the spring candles from last year, from 2022, that have just been allowed to grow. So you can see the difference between needle length on decandled areas versus those areas that have been left alone. And it's massive, and that's within 12 months. So you've got to, I'll reiterate again, when it gets to decandling on your black pines, that you don't just automatically not decandle. You have to have a really, really good reason, because your needle length will get blown out. Now, the reason why I don't go through and scissor prune is second reason, I'll go to the less important one, is it looks a bit ugly. Once those needles all brown off on the tips, it looks crap. So it looks good for a photo, but then afterwards you get all those brown tips, and you've got to look at it for another 12 months until this time next year when you get to be able to cut them out, or pluck them out, sorry. So the most important reason why I don't do it is because if the tree, the pine has decided that it needs to grow a long needle, it's because it's using it to photosynthesize, right? To produce sugars for itself, to basically to feed itself, and to increase its strength. If I go through from a cosmetic point of view and I cut off all those needles that have been grown purely by the tree to help increase the strength, that is exactly what I wanted when I didn't decandle that part of the tree, is I wanted to improve the strength of the tree by allowing it to grow longer. If I go and cut all those needles off just so it looks nice for a photo for social media, then I've just sort of set the tree back a little bit again. And then what's the impact going to be when spring comes around? Will those candles grow as strong as what I want them to do? So when I decandle them, I'm going to get really good results for next winter, for 2024? Or, will they grow a little bit and then I'll cut them off and decandle them in summer, and then they don't spark, they don't push out enough buds because the needles aren't there to draw resources to that area to encourage the budding process that happens with decandling. So my advice to you is, let needle length be something that you worry about over a period of time. Don't ever use your scissors to cut your needles down. Just let it happen. If the tree's produced long needles, then it's done it for a reason, and just let it be what it is. But so the one thing that I was doing was reducing the length overall. Then I'm going through and I'm plucking out the needles, the old needles, most of the old needles, thinning back the areas that have been bunched up with new growth. So getting back to that 1-to-2 ratio in the areas around the tree. But then the last thing that I was doing, and this is what I want to talk about in this podcast, is the need to thin things out. Sooner or later, you'll find that every single one of your bonsai becomes too congested. It's got too much growth in that area, and while it looks really, really cool, it looks great, it looks really good, those inner areas, which are, the saving grace for being able to reduce the length on your bonsai, rely on sunlight and air in there, remember? And if it gets too thick, what doesn't get in there? Sunlight doesn't get in there, air doesn't get in there. So that was the next step I reduced. So I reduced down my height of everything, my height of my pads, my height of my apex, to bring it all back into proportion. I did the clean out that I had to do to open things up, and then I'd look at it and go, okay, where's it too dense? There's too much in these areas. And if I sit back and I can't sort of see air and light, if I can't see light getting into those areas, then I'll have to do something about it. And you've got to thin it out with a variety like Makawa that is very dense. Yatsubusa are the same as well, that you'll find that if you're not constantly cleaning these things out, then they can get too dense and you'll end up with dieback in those areas. And once you start getting dieback in those areas, it's you're on a hiding to nothing, because your length has to increase because everything's growing on the periphery of your pads or your apex. Nothing's growing on the inside. So when it does get too long, you've just got to live with it, because you've got nothing to cut back to. You'll end up with these massive dead patches, and that tree for me was just the catalyst for me to remind everybody to say, hey, don't forget that you need to make sure that this is really important, and this is the reason why. All right, so what am I doing around the yard at the moment? Well, let me see. Pines, and more pines. So it is. I am up against it now. I have only 12-ish days left to complete the pines that I want to in my yard, and be done with it. So my deadline on myself is to make sure that my autumn winter work is done by the 30th of June for my pines. I find that you can extend into July. That's no problems at all. You've got to be very careful with it, and be cautious of the commencement of the new growth. With that commencement of the new growth means that there's going to start being some new needles, but there's also a lot of fluid starting to flood around that tree. So things need to be handled a lot more carefully than I suppose where you can right now. Your trees are a bit more forgiving. The pines I'm talking about. This is all variety of pines. I do my my clean out, plucking of needles, and or cutting of needles if need be, and thinning out and wiring and shaping and that sort of thing. Always during this period of the year for my trees. So I can almost see the end of where I've got to get to. But I've got to stop talking as much as what I do and start plucking more, because it's happening, and it's happening fast. But that's okay. This podcast is a reminder that for you guys out there too, guys and girls, that if you're working on your trees, you're in the southern hemisphere, you're in some of the cooler areas, especially around Australia, that pine time is now, and don't leave it any longer. The other thing is that I've also spent about 4 hours today making up bonsai soil, because repotting, I know I've talked about it over and over and over and over and over again, but repotting is so close now that you can smell it. It's something that I am acutely aware of, and that's, as I talked about earlier, the need for a bit of a mid-year podcast pause, and that's all it is just a pause. is purely for the fact that that repotting kicks in, and when that does, that's something that I'm going to dig my heels into and make sure that I'm all over and get it done, because for me it's honestly the most important task I think that we as bonsai enthusiasts do with our trees is repot them. The rest of the stuff is fluff. It's nice, it's really good, it's really important, but the repotting process is one that's got to be done right. You get that part right, I guarantee you're going to be so happy. If you're new to bonsai, if you've never, maybe you've repotted for years, maybe you've done bonsai for the last 125 years, and this year you're going to try something different because you've heard it on the podcast. He's talk about this magical product called pumice. Well, trust me, you won't look back. Using good soil mix, good bonsai soil mix, not the rubbish that's pre-made at some of the outlets or hardware stores, by getting yourself hold of a good mix that's got some really nice components to it, that's not overly complex, that doesn't take a magician to put together, anything like that, then I think you'll find that the results you'll get in 12 months' time will be significant, and it helps so much more with your consistency, your reliability and consistency of your expected outcomes, which, I've talked about it over and over and over, and it's so important that it's something that you can bank on. You want to be making sure that you, whenever you do something, whenever you're watering your trees, whenever you're fertilizing your trees, that you're applying a seaweed tonic, whatever it is, that you're getting the result that you expect. All right, that result can be improved with some mixes, but you want to make sure that when you're doing something that, the tree has taken the water up a certain way. Okay, so now it's going to grow a certain way, and I can expect that I'm going to get this from this tree, and be able to have the plan that you set for that tree that we talked about in episode 1 of the podcast this year. That you've got real accountability for the results that you're going to achieve with your tree, and that comes from honest to goodness, that it comes from the soil and comes from repotting. So get excited about repotting, for goodness sake, because I love it. I think it's not also time for me to change a few trees around with different pots, and to try different things that I've been thinking about for the last 12 months, 2 years, and it does. It only happens every 2 to 4 years for a lot of my trees. So some of them have been sitting there for quite a long time, and it's now time for me to actually make the changes that I've thought about for so long. So it's really exciting, whether it's new fronts or it's new angles or it's new pots or whatever it is. It's a mechanical process, repotting, that you've got to get right. And once you know the technique for it, you just repeat it over and over and over. And that's something that I'm working a lot on at the moment. The other things that I'm working on, as I've talked about too, is the moisture level, moisture content in your pots. It's super, super important to make sure they're not staying too wet. If they are, do something about it. That little bit of a stone or a bit of timber underneath the side of the pot really makes a difference. And I know moss is lovely, but I hate it. I really hate it. So clear the moss off the top of the pot as well. That'll help with some of that moisture evaporation to happen. Just check the underneath side of the pot too. Be very careful when you check the underneath side of the pot. I was working on a nice black pine the other day, carried it into the workshop, hands underneath the pot, and I forgot my golden rule of checking before I move my trees. And I thought, that'll be all right. But just double check. So I rolled the pot backwards, and there's a redback spider smack in the middle of the pot. My fingers didn't go anywhere near it, thank God. But just a reminder, be careful what's living under your pots at the moment as well. But take the moss off and just watch the trunks. I've been doing a hell of a lot of moss picking off trunks at the moment, because it is wetter in Melbourne. It's one of these things where even though you think you've got a handle on it, takes a day or two, you turn your back and it's often racing again. So just stay on top of that. And I know we're past autumn. I know we're past leaf fall for the vast majority of trees around the yard, but I'm constantly doing clean up on my benches where debris falling off the trees above them or around them, and just make sure that you're thoroughly cleaning the areas that your bonsais are living in, because it makes a big difference to the infestation of insects, of pests that are going to settle in, take hold, and then cause a problem for you very, very soon in the next couple of months as we get towards the spring period. So stay on top of it, and that's what's been happening around the yard for me. So 1 year in, and I'm loving it. I'm loving being a bonsai professional. I'm loving being a resource centre. I'm loving being something or someone that can help you, that can push you to take yourself and your bonsai to a higher level, to make you happier with your bonsai and excited about your bonsai. That's the most important part, I suppose, I'm trying to get across, is that it doesn't matter if it's a baby seed that's just popped its head out of the ground, or it's 4,500-year-old tree that's grown off the tip of an iceberg, whatever it is. as long as it makes you happy, then it makes me very happy in anything that I can do to help. As I said, it's certainly been a great ride 12 months in, and I'm really looking forward to the next 12 months too, and seeing where the bonsai world takes me, because I've loved every second of it, and the people behind the trees is what's really, really super exciting. Seeing beautiful stock and different places growing different trees and specialising in different things. My God, it's a great place, and I encourage you to open your eyes, and as you travel around the place too, hunt out bonsai. Go on a holiday somewhere, just quietly before your partner sees you, just Google bonsai in whatever the place is that you're going to, and maybe plan a trip there, because seeing how different things grow and different parts of the world, it's brilliant. It's really encouraging, and it sort of gives you a bit of a spark when you get back that maybe to do something that you've never done before with your trees, just because you've seen it somewhere else. It's an exciting place. It's a great time to be involved in bonsai, I can tell you. So thanks for sticking around as always. Please reach out, continue to, as you always do, via the socials or any other method that works for you. Make sure you are spending time with your trees at the moment. I know in the Southern Hemisphere it's a bit cool, it's a bit chilly, it's easy to stay inside, it's easy to stay away from them because you think they're doing nothing, but I'd hate for something to happen that you miss. So every day cast your eye over your trees, make sure that they're okay, not too wet, not too dry, but just right, that old Goldilocks approach to everything that we do. And if you're working with pines, then get on it, because you don't have much longer left up your sleeves. Until next time, as always, I mean this from the bottom of my heart, happy bonsai.